Hi there, welcome back on the channel. Today we have another French car to review. It's another Renault. We've already been testing the Laguna Coupe, and now it's an SUV. Well, sort of, maybe a crossover, medium size, something like that. Yeah, we have the Kadjar. It's from 2016, and it has done about 130,000 kilometers until now. As I was saying, we are reviewing the Renault Kadjar. It's a small to medium size SUV with a small to medium size engine, at least for Europe. It's got a 1.5 liter diesel engine with 4 cylinders. It's only front wheel drive, even though it's supposed to be an SUV, but and the transmission is a manual gearbox with 6 speeds. So the specs, at least on paper, obviously it's not something to brag about. The engine develops only 110 horsepower and about 260 Newton meters. But yeah, I almost forgot, the top speed is limited to 180 kilometers per hour, and the sprint from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour happens in about 12 seconds or something like that. Anyway, as I usually say, almost all of that is not nearly as relevant as the fact that the consumptions of the car are actually quite good, even though, as you can see, it's sort of a tall vehicle with 19 inches in terms of the rims, but it helps that the engine is quite frugal, and also the weight of the car is almost 1.4 tons, under 1.4 tons actually. So yeah, I mean, for long trips you could probably see values as low as 3, maybe 4 liters for 100 kilometers. If you go on the highway, maybe something like 5 to 6 liters. And of course, inside the city, probably it will go at around 10 liters. But for a modern family, which is most likely the target audience for this type of vehicle, those are the facts that are more relevant. Not necessarily the fact that it doesn't have 4-wheel drive or some other dynamic specs, because they're more often than not interested in comfort, in space, and in low maintenance and running costs. And considering that the 1.5 liter diesel engine from Renault, it's actually sort of a legendary engine for them, being very reliable and with small consumptions in terms of fuel. I think it's pretty much the ideal engine and configuration for this vehicle. And because I was talking about a family, we need to check out the luggage space. Considering this is not a premium manufacturer or a premium vehicle, obviously the load cover is gonna be manual, which is not something that I enjoy using, but at least you can reach it without getting your trousers dirty from the bumper of the car. And as you can see, we have the usual carry-on luggage in here. It looks sort of petite. I think you can squeeze about 6, maybe 7 carry-on luggages like this one, especially if you keep in mind that you have another storage space underneath this false floor. We'll see more about that in a moment. Firstly, I have to show you the hooks that are on either side, the ability to fold down the rear seats from here, and also the small cubbies that are on either side as well. Now if I push the carry-on luggage like this, you can see you can use the false floor to make a shelf almost in the trunk. And also if you look underneath it, you will see that there's enough space here for some additional stuff, and also a spare wheel, which again in modern times it's something quite rare. Continuing the theme of the fact that this is a family car, we are gonna check out the things in the back. Obviously the door card is not gonna be awesome. It's quite hard plastic, brittle kind of plastic, but at least here on the armrest things are getting softer, so that's nice to see at least. Yeah, you do have a couple of pockets, a speaker, and a small decor here, but nothing really fancy, considering this is quite a budget car after all. You do get some space in here, and another one here, a 12-volt outlet, a central armrest, and some lights in the ceiling. The downside of the armrest is the fact that you don't have a hook for it, and it's quite hard to get it out of the bench. And also the cup holders, even though they seem to be adaptive, they're not, and also they are quite shallow. I mean, a small cup could sit in here, but a bottle, no way. And as I said, you get it pretty hard to fall down. So this is the space here in the back. As you can see, I have a palm and a half of space for my knees, and also in terms of headroom as well. So yeah, for the most part it's all right. I can stretch my legs. The front seats are actually pretty high. They're set this way, so you can really stretch your legs. But as usual, I have the same complaint. The bench, it's a bit shallow. I have some space left here that is not supported in any way. And also I think that for a family vehicle where you're supposed to have child seats, because you do have ISOFIX points, the door doesn't open all that wide. That's pretty much it. And actually this makes the access inside the vehicle quite difficult. Now let's check out how the things are in front. And it's a bit better. We have some sort of a soft material up here, and obviously down below. Control of the locking and unlocking of the doors, some decor element with contrasting stitching, and again some storage space and the speaker in the door card. As for the seat, it doesn't have lumbar support, but at least you can adjust it by height. And also this lever helps you to fold down the whole seat, so you can load something through the trunk area, the rear bench, and almost to the front of the car. Now let's check out the space here in front. And as you can see, even though the seat is in line with the B-pillar, I have more than enough space here. I mean, there's more than a palm of space for my knees. Even though, yeah, you don't get some soft materials here for your knee. For the most part, it's all right. It's one of the advantages of having the engine not in line with the car, actually. And also, the glove box is quite deep, even though, again, it's not covered. At last, we'll see how the things are for the driver. Except the fact that we have controls for the outside mirrors and all the electric windows. The door card is pretty similar. with one thing to mention actually. We only get automatic function on the driver's side, not on the others. So that's a bit weird, something that you would otherwise see on Japanese car. But anyway, the seat itself, it's pretty similar with height adjustment and the lumbar support. That's on this side. It's a manual support. Then on the dashboard, on the left side of the steering wheel, we have the eco function and the deactivation of the start-stop system, and the height adjustment of the steering, of the lights. I'm sorry, also the steering wheel, but I meant the lights. This is the POV of the driver. As you can see, the steering wheel, it's actually pretty small, but interesting to hold on to. We get the controls for the multimedia behind the steering wheel, and on the steering wheel itself you control the phone and some things from the gauge cluster, and on the left side the cruise control. But that's not all. In typical Renault fashion for this generation of vehicles, the cruise control is both here and here. I don't know why. I mean, they still had blank space here. Anyway, behind the steering wheel you get the usual stocks for lights and wipers, and also the gauge cluster doesn't reflect the sunlight like on the video in real life, but as you can see, it's all digital. It mimics a gauge cluster, but the screen itself is not the highest quality. So yeah, all in all, it's alright for the most part. Then continuing towards the middle of the car, we have the light fixtures with auto control for all the lights inside the car. You can only use it separately. That's a bit weird. And also the mirror is not dimmable. You have to use it like this, and it does have a small bezel actually. Then towards the middle of the central console we have the hazard lights, a small infotainment screen, which again is not the highest quality in terms of resolution, but at least it responds quite quickly. Down below it's the climate unit with physical buttons, always nice to see. Some storage space with a 12-volt outlet, a couple of USBs, and a port for connecting your headphones. Then you get the gear selector for the manual gearbox, the parking brake. I already shown you the cruise control startup setting from here. Then we have a coin holder, a cup holder, a couple of cup holders that are not adjustable, and once more, like in the back, they are quite shallow. I'm not really sure that they are gonna work, at least not for bottles. And in terms of the armrest, you have a cubby here and another one down below, which is actually huge. You could fit a 2-liter bottle in there, I think, or at least a 1-liter. Welcome to the driving part of the review. As usual, I've been driving the car for a moment, just to get my first impressions ready. And as you can see, it's a different scenery. We are already on the highway, because the car once more is lent to me by a company that sells used cars here in Romania, and it's actually for sale. So I won't really be able to talk about the problems of the model. But at least I drove it inside the city outside the city and now on the highway. And I tend actually to compare it in a way with the other Renault that I already reviewed, and you can also find that review on the channel. And that's actually the Renault Laguna Coupe. I know they are completely different vehicles, and they don't necessarily reach out to the same people, but they are manufactured by the same company. They both got a diesel engine with 4 cylinders, manual gearbox, and front-wheel drive. So let's see. Where the Laguna felt like a more upmarket product, and it was really meant for someone who is a bit more passionate about cars. This one feels more like a budget vehicle, something that you consider if you're carrying your family and a lot of luggage from point A to point B, and you also want some good efficiency in terms of fuel consumption. It definitely feels more like a budget offering, something for someone who's more pragmatic rather than passionate about cars. And in a way, probably is for the best, because in this segment, the small to medium size SUV or crossovers, if you want, especially the non-premium part of the market, I'm pretty sure that the buyer isn't looking for something passionate to show off to their friends or the family. They're looking for something comfortable with enough space and with a low overall cost of ownership. So that's why I made the comparison with the Laguna. Even though it's the same manufacturer, that model felt a bit more upmarket, a bit better put together, and even a bit comfortable. Yeah, you could probably say that this one is an SUV, so it's a bit higher, the driving position, and also the center of gravity. And unfortunately, in terms of comfort and noise, this vehicle is equipped with 19 inches in terms of the rims. So yeah, it helps in the looks department, but not in the comfort level. And that's actually one of my first impressions. It's quite a noisy car. Even though we have frames on top of the windows compared with the Laguna Coupe, this one feels a bit noisier inside, and also the suspension is a bit rough on the rough surfaces, on the rough roads. I don't even want to imagine having to deal with a pothole. But maybe if you go for the 17 inches, you'll feel a bit more comfort inside. I don't know. Again, that's why I said the car gives me a feeling of a budget model. In terms of the insulation as well, you do hear a lot of noise from the mirrors. Then again, of course, it's a tall vehicle, quite a long one actually, and the outside mirrors are pretty large. But nevertheless, you also hear the tire noise and even the engine. Again, it's a diesel, it's with 4 cylinders. You are not really able to distance yourself from it. But compared to the 2-liter engine from Laguna, this 1.5 feels a bit noisier. Continuing with the steering feel and the gearbox, again, if I'm gonna draw a comparison between this one and the Laguna, that felt a bit more precise. This one feels a bit loose, and yeah, it's easy to turn the steering wheel, but you don't really know what the front tires are doing. And again, maybe it's not necessarily something bad, because the vehicle is not meant for spirited driving. But even so, it would have been nice to have a slightly more precise steering feel. Other than that, I'll circle back to the engine. For the most part, in the lower half of the RPM range, it's quite a peppy engine. If you know how to use it, you could overtake without a problem. It has got only 110 horsepower, but the overall car is not that heavy, being at around 1.3, 1.4 tons. So it's all in the driver, in the way that he got used to the car and how he knows to get the most out of this engine. So those are the driving impressions. As I said, I'm not really able to talk about the problems, but I could give you some maintenance tips. And as usual, because it's a diesel engine, I would recommend to use it mainly outside the city, and to shorten the service intervals to around 7.5, maybe 8,000 kilometers, especially if you use it inside the city. But if you go outside the city, I don't know, once a week, or most of the time you drive outside the city, you could probably stretch that interval to around 10,000 kilometers. After all, this engine is a well-known unit for Renault, and it doesn't seem to have regular issues. But as usual, some preventive maintenance, it's always gonna be cheaper than having to repair the car. And that's pretty much it. Again, in terms of maintenance, there's not much to talk about. You don't have a double clutch gearbox. The manual one doesn't really require maintenance. You don't have the all-wheel drive system. Again, some additional cost that is not for this vehicle. Maybe you'll spend a bit more on tires, but because of their size, but considering the way you're supposed to drive this vehicle, pretty relaxed, I mean, and also the weight of the model, I'm sure that you'll go 5 years without changing the tires. And in the same note, the brakes or the suspension is not gonna require so much attention. So that's the overall cost of maintaining the car. Pretty small. quite an accessible vehicle, both in terms of buying it and then running. The consumption figure as well, it's quite good. You will not be able to really to get so often values like 3 to 4 liters for 100 kilometers, especially if you drive with your family in the car and some luggages. If you want something like that, you could look at the Renault Clio, for example, which actually does have the same engine. But considering the size of the car, values as high as 5 to 6 liters are pretty acceptable. So overall, my impressions are good in the most part, and now I'll share some of the things that I really enjoyed about the car. For one thing is the way it looks. The overall design of the car makes it feel a bit more upmarket than it's actually in reality. And even though I don't have kids or I don't necessarily travel often with a full trunk, I enjoyed the space in the back. Those covers, the false floor of the luggage area, it's pretty interesting. You can use it to store some things to not move around. You also get a spare tire and quite a lot of space. So for a middle class, small to middle class SUV, it's something to consider in a good way. Other than that, I'm not really able to share that much with you because I don't feel like I would own this type of vehicle, and not this one with this engine and gearbox combination, unless I really had to. Maybe if I was looking for something to go from A to B with a minimal cost, maybe in that situation probably I could take a look at something like this Renault. But in terms of the things that I'm not really a fan of, I need to say that the overall impression of the car inside while driving, especially in terms of the noise levels, I'm not really a fan. And I do have a vehicle to compare it with, because my own car is quite noisy inside, even though it's a medium, not really small. It's a medium-sized sedan, and it's supposed to have a drag coefficient really low compared with this vehicle, at least. The noises inside my car are pretty high, and the same applies for this vehicle. And again, I'm not really a fan of this power plant. You really have to keep it between 1,500 RPMs to maybe 3,000 tops to get the most out of it. And even then, it's quite present inside the cabin, so yeah, maybe I would go for some petrol version of the car. But overall, it's not really a vehicle that is gonna upset you in any way. You do get some interesting features. As I said, you get a upmarket design, at least on the exterior. So for the most part, I understand the market and why the manufacturers are starting to push these kind of vehicles. And I think that's gonna be my conclusion for the driving part as well. Even though it is quite a budget offering, it's quite a straightforward car. The overall cost of ownership is gonna be pretty low, so if you manage your expectations for it, you'll be happy. And hopefully you will be happy with this review as well. If you are, consider to like the video and also subscribe to the channel. I'll now go back to the highway to do a sprint from 40-50 kilometers per hour to 130. But until then, I'm gonna end the video for a moment, and I have to thank you for watching. See ya. As I said, there's an additional part to the driving test, because we are re-entering the highway. And I want you to join me in a short sprint from 50 kilometers per hour to the legal top speed here in Romania on highways. That's 130 kilometers per hour. Seriously? So this is it, 130. As I said, it's quite a noisy vehicle, especially at this speed. If I was the owner, probably I would keep it at around 110 in order to be able to drive for 400-500 kilometers without getting upset, without getting tired. Yeah, that's gonna be it. Again, thank you for watching. See ya.